Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Share What You're Making with Chair and Bacon. I am your host, Chair, alongside Bacon. Hello, Bacon.
Hello, I'm Bacon. This intro's already got weird, but let's go. Let's roll with it.
I like it. It's only going to get weirder from here. Our guest today, the one and only Yalor. You know him, you love him. Meta Cartel, Raid Guild, every DAO that you're a part of, he probably started it. I am excited for our conversation. Let's call it a free-form jazz style conversation.
Yeah, so we found that Yalor and I both like to ramble. And so this episode is mostly just us rambling, doing what we're best at, some would say.
Well, you don't start a podcast because you don't like to talk.
I suppose that's a fair point.
And here we are.
Here, I thought we started the podcast because we had, wisdom and knowledge to bestow upon the masses. But
it might also be that we like the sound of our own voices and hearing ourselves talk over and over, saying the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, as the resident editor for these episodes, I can, confirm. Definitely a thing.
Luckily, Bacon has saved me from that torture, and it is a torturous thing. Speaking of torture, this episode and every episode of Share What You're Making with Chair and Bacon is brought to you by Metagame, metagame.wtf. It is indeed a brain infection. Visit metagame.wtf, follow at metafam on Twitter, and if you want to learn more, go to wiki.metagame.wtf.
Yes, so it can infect your brain too.
Oh, I recommend Gnomeski's piece if you can find it in the library. I have a playbook in there as well. Bacon, do you have any content on the site?
All of it? I'm in charge of it. So
the entire thing?
Does that mean I just get to adopt all the content?
Bacon is the president of Metagame, and he's also the CEO. Please send all your complaints to him at Baconator on Twitter. I am at Very Comfy, VRYCMFY. How do you spell your Twitter, Bacon?
It's with the H. Just you'll find me. If you really want to talk to me, you'll find me. The easiest way is to get into Discord probably and find me. I lurk around the Metagame Discord hardcore because I'm the CEO and the president. As apparently I've been promoted. So if you want to find me, the best way is just to jump in the Discord and you'll find me easily.
Speaking of which, we do have a burgeoning Discord. It will be available for you to join as you hear these words coming from your audio device. Please join our Discord. You can find it up on my Twitter and on Bacon's Twitter as well.
Bold assumptions, Share. Bold assumptions.
The best part about pre-recording is you can make things happen after you say them, and they still will be true.
Still bold assumptions. All right.
We are available on Spotify, on iTunes, everywhere you can find a podcast. You can search for Share What You're Making with Chair and Bacon. And please share, please subscribe, please retweet us on Twitter.
We're actually part of the MetaView podcast still currently, which is
that's true.
So that's technically not a podcast in itself, I don't think. I think it's just the overarching title for all of the metagame related podcasts. I don't think there's an official MetaView podcast. I think it's just all of the metagame podcasts are published through the MetaView podcast.
If we're going to get super technical, I think it's the MetaFam podcast.
MetaFam podcast. Okay.
Within that, I think, however, in my testing, in my QA, I have found it directs you right to our episode. Okay. So hopefully that will be useful for people as we build a cache. We're probably going to have to grow and expand.
Yeah, we'll probably expand on that eventually. But for now, if you're looking for our episodes, they'll be all titled Share What You're Making, but they'll be mixed in with the other episodes in the MetaFam podcast. So like our episodes like 1 and 2 and 3 will be like episodes like whatever, like 20, 28 and like 32 or whatever, right? Like as they get mixed in with the other ones. We welcome you to check out the other episodes though in the MetaFam podcast, MetaView podcast, whichever it is. There's some good stuff in there. Some of it's not as interesting to you if you're not a metagame person, but a lot of it is. There's a good description of each episode though when you look at it in Spotify. So feel free to branch out a bit and try out some other episodes.
Yeah, I encourage everyone to check out Metagame, especially newbies, because it may very well only confuse you more, but only at first, and then you get it.
The rabbit hole analogy is really good because you kind of find it and you're like, this is weird, but it sparks your interest and you kind of fall down it and you come out the other side. You're like, oh, I kind of get it now. That was a crazy wild ride, but now I kind of get it.
I have suction cup prints all over me. Folks,
Nova.
We are going on the road. Your boys are going out west to Denver for MCON September 15th through 17th.
2 young guns on the trail.
Just a couple of gun-slinging cowboys ready for whatever comes at them. Ready to give a little too.
Give a lot. Ladies, watch out.
We plan to have incredible guests for you all. We will be recording a ton. So I will just tease that we have some very, very big guests coming up for you. Interviews that you might not get anywhere else. And I can almost guarantee you won't get anywhere else. Why do I tease? Because I have no idea who those guests are going to be.
Yeah, I was about to say, I was like, are we going to let that slip? Are we going to give them that? Are we going to part the kimono for that? Or no?
I'm going to keep it close to the vest. But the type of environment we're going to be in, who knows what we can pull in quickly, who knows who's going to show up.
That's true. We're told it'll be a ripe environment. Is that? That's not a thing.
An environment ripe for the building.
Yes.
The DAOing.
And the picking up other people away from doing real work and building to talk shit with us on our podcast.
We're going to find out who the real builders are when we're there, who do not get up from their laptops, but are still present.
But we'll drag them away. We'll drag them kicking and screaming from their laptops, doing real productive work to scream with us and hopefully not kick us.
Might have to do a roving mic segment. There will be a hack space separate from the noisy space within MCON. We should take a mic in there and do a few interviews because that's where you're going to catch the people really building this stuff.
Hey, this is a quiet space. Let's do some interviews.
Yeah. Hey, real quick, share what you're making. Yeah, I'm Chair. He's bacon.
Share what you're making. Oh, man. Just look over their shoulders. One of us at either side. Just lurking over them. So we are. We're the vultures. We're the vultures of the Web3 crypto space, just picking everyone's brains clean of good ideas.
I'm going to be, it's going to be, I'm looking forward to it. Folks, our guest today is the venerable Yalor. If you are around crypto Twitter, the DAO space, Gitcoin, Metacartel, Raid Guild, just to name a few, or just ran into him hiking or riding his bike somewhere, or snowboarding.
Yeah, he does live in the woods, as he says in our podcast.
Yeah, or maybe you just gazed at his beard, but you probably have seen or come across Yalor at some point. So I'm very excited to talk to him. He is one of the main influences. He was one of the main influences on me to grow a SAC and quit my corporate gig and join the Web3 community, go full force into DAOs.
He's trying to get me to grow a SAC too, but it's not working as well.
So I'm easy. I'm an easy lay. You just got to make me smile.
Because you already had a big old sack. Mine's all small and shriveled. Like I just got out of the pool, so it's got to grow.
It's just always warm in California. So anyway,
I'm still up here in Boston. It's so cold. Like I'm worried I have to pay my astronomical rent.
It's terrible. It's terrible for the lie. You know what I mean? You got to get a little humid. The summers are good. I want to let folks know that Bacon had to chop up this episode a little bit due to a stream of consciousness.
So we started this episode trying to talk about MCON, obviously, and so you'll listen when we first heard the interview. We start talking about MCON and immediately get off topic, and we never got back on topic. So we ended up recording like a 40-some, almost 50-minute, almost an hour talking with Yalor about like random other ramblings, but it ended up being such good content that we wanted to give it to you guys anyway. So I kind of just chopped it down a bit. And so that's why you'll hear some awkward cuts. You'll hear a little bit of our theme song music at the cuts. There's 2 major cuts in here. And it also just kind of cuts off at the end because we had some technical difficulties at the end and we lost Yalor's internet connection. But it's good stuff. And instead of focusing on MCON, it'll be mostly about the political sphere, both in the real world and in the DAO space, and how we're trying to solve some of the problems of real world politics with DAO space governance, and how we still fell prey to a lot of the problems from real world politics in the DAO space. So it's a very interesting episode.
Really excited that we were able to nab him early on in our quest. Certainly he will be back. We also have some, we can tease. You know what? We won't.
You don't want to tease the next guest we already recorded?
Well, let's just say he's part of a gigantic DAO. He is a developer for a gigantic decentralized exchange that may or may not rhyme with Smooshy. And he is the venerable Ross Campbell of LexDAO.
Oh, there you go. You just dropped it. After that big tease, just go ahead and drop the date.
We can't tease everything, and we have to show the people we do have. We have real guests lined up.
Yeah, we do have real guests lined up. Already recorded, actually. Just waiting for me to edit it.
It's
Sorry,
in the can, folks.
Yeah, I dragged my feet in recording this, on editing this particular episode, and hopefully that won't happen again.
We're about to hit you folks hard and fast and in the face with lots of content, starting with this conversation in a free-form style with Yalor. Without further ado, here he is. Well, it looks like sharing what you're making is going on the road, ladies and gentlemen.
The road to MCON, and that's the road we're on right now. Literally, the road to MCON is on the road to DevCon. So, like, it's all happening in tandem, essentially. The DevCon team, the Ethereum Foundation reached out and they were like, can we put your event on our website? And I was like, why? They're like, we want it to be part of the road to DevCon. And I was like, do you want to give us money? And they're like, maybe, but can you put this NFT on your website? And I was like, maybe. Let us know if you approve our grant proposal and we'll see how it goes.
A peek behind the curtain of how things get done.
Yeah, it also sounds like you're really skeptical every time somebody reaches out to you something. You're like, why?
Oh, for sure, 100%. So much. The more you're in this space, the more skepticism arises. People are like, "Hey, let me tell you a great idea for MCON," and I'm like, "No, let me tell you a great idea. You can come and volunteer at the event, and then we'll see how great you are. Because if you're not willing to do that, then I doubt they're even going to be a cool person to hang out with. Because everyone wants to come out and hang and do cool events, and no one wants to like man the door." So those are my rules. I'm not a guy that does stuff.
You talk about other guys who do stuff?
Things.
You make other guys do stuff like man the door?
I can get people to do things for me. Yeah, that's been known to be my shtick. But they enjoy it at the end. They do enjoy it at the end. They're like, thanks for giving me a job. I'm like, you're welcome.
Well, manning the door is actually pretty legit as far as things go at like conferences and stuff. I had an aunt who used to like essentially man the door for the UN, and she had a pen that Winston Churchill gave to her. Like that's like a cool story.
Doorman is a great role.
Yeah, a very progressive position for a lady. She was a doorman, especially back
door
in
lady,
the day.
door woman. Well, now I think stewardesses are all like air people. They're no longer like they're sexless now.
They're all just assholes now.
Funny story, in 2019, I was a steward, aka doorman, at ETH Denver. And I helped many people, and I made a lot of good friends. And so it was a great position for me to be at the bottom, as Bacon notes. It was a powerful position to be. And I really enjoyed it. I was like helping people find their way in. I was like pointing them in the right direction. And I was like, all right, this is how stuff works from the inside. Not very well, like kind of crazy, but like we doing this. Yeah. People are, at conferences, right? Especially free ones. Yay, MCON.
It's an interesting point that people wonder. I wondered, what's going? How do things get done in the real world, or with people that are really doing it? How does it get done? And it's really like anything else, and very sometimes haphazardly in the moment, like anything.
It's like the more I learn about politics, I'm like, how do things get done in politics? And I'm like, oh, most of them don't get done at all. They just talk about it, and then people forget that they said they were going to do that. And then, like years later, it's like, oh yeah, well that idea was
you had to learn
way
this?
too late, and we already spent the money.
How much research did it take for you to learn that?
It took a couple hours. I've been living in the woods for a long time.
It sounds like it.
I don't know if you've seen this beard. Like, I like the nature, not so much the paying attention to politics.
That's probably the best. I mean, most people who start to look into politics quickly realize that politics is not really their thing, to put it as you just did.
That's where all my crypto friends who were like, I used to be in politics, and now I run a DAO. And I'm like, aha, I see. Like, the pivot is happening here, the great exodus. Anyone who wants to stay in politics, I kind of question, like, is that a person I really want to know or hang out with? Like, because I don't think that's an environment that's for any healthy or sane person.
I don't think we can escape it, or the more I'm involved with different DAOs and seeing the problems that arise, they mirror the real world, and the politics or the real world, the, let's say, Web 2 world or corporate world. A lot of the same issues arise, yeah. In a sense, disappointing, but it's also... it shows, I don't know, if we can solve these issues within the Web3 space or within DAOs, there might be some finality or some hope. Or at least it seems like within this space, there's like it's like the last ray of hope for a lot of different things. So
What are the best solutions that are being like implemented right now for solving real world problems in DAOs?
in DAOs,
Yeah, or like what DAO solutions are coming out right now, which really kind of like could have a big impact on the real world infrastructure.
DAO House, their functionality, their ease of spinning a DAO up, and increasingly how fast and efficient it is. The ease of use of multi-signature wallet. But like I would say, if there's one tool, it's DAO House itself and the sort of the features that it offers in a form spun up for you right away for your DAO or baked into the DAO. That's one that I would call out.
Yeah.
How about y'all?
One of the big ones that like I see coming along, I don't think anything has this yet, but then again, I don't look into the space at all yet because for reasons I'm about to explain. But the whole financial thing from the like kind of grant perspective, the kind of VC capital options, and just the ownership perspectives. So from like Gitcoin style grants, like community funding, to the DAOs that allow you to kind of create your own like venture capital things, like I think like Metacartel Ventures and DAOs like that, to just the concept of Mulak DAO, where it allows people shared access.
Did you say Mulak? Mulak DAO?
That's how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I
Mulak.
love
I also
Mulak
like
DAOs.
the term
Mulak DAOs are
Mulak
my
for
favorite
another
DAOs.
reason that we could go down that rabbit hole if you would like. I just like the concept of the Mulak, but that's another story. Anyway, yes, the Mulak DAOs that have the shared financial ownership, because I think long term those are going to be huge deals. Because historically, like a lot of the role of government and whatnot is just kind of being the treasury, the shared treasury for a community, right, and distributing money. And so a lot of these like core functions in the quote unquote real world or traditional world, right, break down to how do you join together and distribute money, because things that people actually need that they don't necessarily usually really want to pay for are very expensive. So things like, road project, right? Scientific and medical research, right? Things like funding, various utilities that it's like very expensive. And so you need to be able to collect very small amounts of money from a lot of people who will be affected to create these large projects. But then the question is, who do you trust to shepherd that money? And then how does that function? And that's where we get end up with a lot of problems in government, right? Is you get all this red tape and overhead and waste spending because you get these giant budgets that inflate, and then nobody's really keeping track of the nickels and dimes, as it were, and end up nickeling and diming the entire populace, and then everyone hates their taxes, and then that's how the whole politics things quickly goes to shit. So not that it's happening now, but these financial structures that you get to create in these DAO spaces, I think long term will be huge, because it creates a lot easier, it's like a lot easier to coordinate around the money like that, and you kind of can make it mostly trustless in that nature, and you kind of get these things that run automatically algorithmically, so it can way cut down on overhead and red tape and the politics involved in these large projects, if that made sense. I tend to ramble.
Okay, do you want to know what I think?
Sure, yeah.
I think that just the concept of transparency using the blockchain is one of the most important features that will help solve for the issues. It's like the government or the demo, what's that thing called? Democracy, yeah. Like these concepts have created like these obscure walls around like, okay, what you can see, what you can't see, where the funding's going, where it's not going. And that is one of the biggest mm, like rug pulls, I would say, on taxpayers, on people, individuals, is just not knowing where the money's going, not knowing why this senator's office needs to spend $100,000 on a door or some stupid stuff like that, right? Not being able to follow the money. And the advent of tools like DAO House, Tally, just being able to look at the blockchain and see where our politicians, right? We have protocol politicians, right? People who lead DAOs, who lead groups and individuals. You can see what they vote on. You can see the funds that they have in those wallets. You can see like what their weighted influence is, and you can kind of follow the history of those things. More and more DAO dashboards are going to be coming out, like Deep DAO and stuff like this, where you'll be able to follow the progress of what people have voted on, what suggestions they've made, what proposals they brought forth, and how much support they had from the community, which is a trust metric, in my opinion. Like how powerful you are and how effective you are in your community is a massive metric for how much I should follow or believe what you're saying. Because if you're putting out proposals and everyone's like, yep, I like what you're doing, I like what you're saying, I'm voting it in, I'm voting yes, then you know that that person has a strong support of their community per se. And that is one of the biggest things is DAOs and Ethereum-based governance is starting with the concept of transparency. And if you are a protocol politician or a person who is like well respected in this space, you know that transparency comes with this space. It's not like you can't get around doing a bunch of stuff from the back. There are like whale situations with financial stuff sometimes, but when it comes to the communities, their governance, their grants programs, all of this stuff is public by design. And that's what makes people feel safe, comfortable, and want to engage. There's even people on Twitter now complaining about the Uniswap governance problems, right? But they're going to solve those problems because if enough people see the same things over and over again, they have to move towards a place of making a solution that suits the community. If they don't, their community will leave and do something else, right? They'll go work on some other project. But with the government and with the systems that we have now, we can't leave and do something else, right? We have to like violently overthrow the people in power in order to put a new solution into place. So I think it's like we're building solutions that go around the bureaucracy, that go around the big hole, the big black hole that consumes all of these resources, to the point where people are like, why don't we just use this stuff, use this blockchain stuff, use these like DAO things. And I think it'll just be this kind of slow trickle of people exit, especially the smart people. Get the smart people. We have all the engineers. We have all the people who are like thinking in this forward way, who are like, we're probably better together, right? We're better using transparent systems. And like, that's the thing that it comes down to at the end of the day. It's like, transparency, accountability, and integrity as individuals, which I think the whole political circus lacks, is going to change the game, right? And it's going to open up so many more opportunities for people like Chair and Bacon and Yalor to like take positions on behalf of communities with the trust of individuals who have resources that we can pull together and that we can put in places that benefits our communities. And that just in and of itself is a revolution.
True.
Speak about your role at Gitcoin, and for those who might be unfamiliar, Gitcoin had a very made a big splash with their GTC drop a few months ago. Part of claiming your tokens, and GTC is a governance token, if I'm not mistaken. A part of taking or claiming your tokens was deciding whether you yourself would be voting on DAO issues or delegating those voting rights to um, someone else. And I chose Yalor, as did a high percentage of people. And I noticed, I don't remember what the number is, but I noticed a significant and not insignificant number of people have put their faith in you. And so, talk about the pressure, talk about the responsibility that carries, and sort of how that has changed your clicking on votes and deciding, if it has at all. And sort of because that is the new paradigm to me, talking about taking it from the ambiguous to the real. How do we delegate our interest to someone and be able to see it very plainly how they're using it? You are in that position, so speak on that a little bit.
For sure, yeah. I worked with Gitcoin for about 10 months. They're an amazing team. It was awesome to work with them. And the whole point of me working with them was to be a part of the transitionary team, going from working on the core team, working on the product, working on the tokenomics, to working with the DAO, right? I don't get paid to work at Gitcoin anymore, just so you know. Like, I don't get paid at all to work on the DAO. We create proposals, and those proposals have GTC tokens that have no economic value. It's a governance token. That Gitcoin Holdings will tell you that. Now you can go on Coinbase and see that there's a different story happening there, but that's neither here nor there.
That's a whole nother topic. I'd love to get into it at some point in time because, yeah, that stuff's just. Anyway, continue.
Hello, welcome to America. SEC trying to cover our asses, people are trying to cover their asses, basically. So there's that, right? But my goal was always to work for the community, and as an individual who has gained a lot of trust by being a reputable and like not a dumb decision maker inside of communities, I was able to say like, okay, cool. I'll help coordinate all of the stewards, and we designed the stewards program so that we could activate people in the community who felt like they wanted to be empowered to participate in governance. Now, anyone who holds GTC is a member of the DAO, right? They have a vote. But our stewards have the power to have delegation. And you only have to raise your hand to become a delegate. If you're like, hey, I'm Bacon, I want to be a delegate. And if Chair and Squirrel and Cookie Monster, they all want to delegate to you as well, they can all do that, right? And that's totally fine. You can even delegate to someone who's not officially a steward, right? You can delegate to yourself. So that was the kind of forced governance through the GTC token launch was anyone who claims GTC needs to do a proof of knowledge. They do a little quiz, 3 tokens or 3 questions. What is Gitcoin all about? And what's our token for? And then it was proof of delegation, which is like, where are you going to delegate your token to? You can delegate it to another guy who you trust, a Yalor or someone else, or yourself. And the third was proof of receipt. So it's like, okay, you've got the tokens, they're yours. Now you can do what you want with them. And the goal was to get as many of the tokens delegated as possible, so that people weren't like, I'm going to go sell these right now. It was like, I'm going to use these for the purpose that they are intended, which is governance, right? Now, the GTC token has a large market cap right now because of the way that the market perceives its future value. And that is the power of Ethereum, right? This is a governance token. It's used to signal voting and stuff, but it also has an economic value. So people are accepting this token for work. So they're like, we're going to run a work stream, we're going to do this for a year. We will accept the GTC token. They don't need to accept USD, they don't need to accept DAI or any stablecoins. They're willing to take the token. And then they can go to exchanges and do with it whatever they want with the token. And my goal as a steward is to ensure that the best proposals for the community are being presented and championed. So it's like, if this is a bad idea, I'm not going to champion it. But if this is a good idea, I'm going to bring it to the community and I'm going to say, hey, this will help us either fulfill our mission, it aligns with our values, or extend our treasury window. And so those are the things that I've been focusing on. I've been off for a little while since having a baby and stuff like that.
Oh,
But
congrats.
like, I'm there.
Congratulations,
Either. Yeah. But I'm there as like one of the many voices of like amazing people in the community who have the trust and delegation authority to act on behalf of individuals. And I would say most of the people that got really big airdrops of GTC, they're not selling. They're not interested in selling. They want to see Gitcoin get to all of its missions to kind of spread public goods everywhere and to really take over more like mainstream public goods as well. And they're doing the most insane stuff right now. I don't know if you guys just saw the Moon Boys robots, or it's like a Moonshot Collective robot sets. They just launched 303 PFP avatars on a bonding curve, and they funded an entire Gitcoin grants round in like 36 hours. Like what took them months of like raising money, asking for sponsorships, doing all this stuff, they raised it in 36 hours with some NFT sales. And that was from a working group of the GTC DAO.
That's amazing. That really makes me think.
It makes you think about NFTs, right? Like there's NFTs.
Certainly.
So the one thing that's, since, I mean, I know this isn't ground we meant to cover here, so, but that's one thing that's always personally bothered me about like the DAO space and Ethereum and Web3 and the crypto things, is that all of these governance tokens always have an economic value, which makes a lot of sense in the terms of what you just said, in terms of like, you're doing this work politically, like people can accept it in exchange for work, and you want these things to have value, so they have real stake, to really keep people accountable when they're like using these things to cast votes and things, right? Like you don't want them to be free to people. But on the other hand, having them available in the open market and having your votes be weighted by the number of tokens basically makes everything essentially an oligarchy, right? Because people can just buy votes at that point. So how do you feel about those types of systems, and what do you think about that moving forward? And are there any ways to balance that like in the future?
That's a good point. How do people avoid vote buying and such? I don't think we see a lot of vote buying in crypto.
I don't think so yet, but I just know that would be an issue if we stick to I don't think it's an issue yet, but we're also still relatively small compared to what we're hoping to be and what we can be and what we probably will be. So I suspect it just will be an issue that will grow over time. And it's also, I think, a sticking point for some people. So there's still obviously a lot of crypto skeptics out there. So obviously I don't even know why I'm saying it. And that's one of the things is like when I go to explain to people crypto, that's one of the things that always strikes me weirdly. And makes me a little hesitant explaining to them because I don't want them to pick up on either the fact that this can essentially become like people, although we live in a flawed political system, it's still a democracy, and people love that meme, right? The democracy, like it still really pulls at people's heartstrings, and people are really still dedicated to that. And so people, flawed though it is, people are going to be hesitant to leave that for like an oligarchy structure.
But isn't it exactly the same in the existing structure that like you're getting your vote's getting bought by like Fox News or CNN, right? Like
It's yeah, it's not
the advertising
exactly.
dollars that are going into convincing you that that guy's right versus that guy is
Yeah.
kind of the same. You just don't see any of the net benefit.
Yeah, it's the meme though, right? So it's like it's kind of the same, but it's not exactly the same because like in the DAO space with tokens having the real financial value, it's baked into the system, right? Like you're like kind of almost encouraging vote selling versus in our current political system, it's like a faux pas that everybody does anyway, right? It's like everybody's dirty little secret. Like everybody knows it's happening. Everyone sees it happening. Everyone tries to pretend like it's not happening because it's not supposed to. And like it's like one of those things that everybody knows is bad, but everybody does it anyway, right? And so and like people obviously also spend a lot of time trying to fix that, right? And so there's always all this messaging going out about like, these different things trying to cut down on funding for like presidential campaigns in particular, and like that's always a big selling point of like people trying to self-fund, and like that was a big thing with like Trump and Hillary Clinton was like, where's the money coming from, who's funding these campaigns, and Trump was like, oh, I'm self-funded or grassroots funded, and everybody kept coming out like these conspiracy theories about like, or truth theories about Hillary Clinton being funded by like major corporations and stuff. And so that's always like it's a constant theme, and it's constantly something people are trying to address, at least even if they're not, right? Versus the concept of just having it being baked into the system.
I don't think that I mean, so we're definitely not experiencing those things yet, but you are
Mhm.
right. We are ripe for those kind of issues. But the beautiful thing about the Ethereum community and governance inside this community is we have an unlimited amount of technical brilliance
Mhm.
to be able to solve for those issues. Whether it's like bread ID type unique verification or non transferable tokens, like we can, if we see those things, like there are people in these positions, right, of power who are very trustworthy and who are very like
Yeah.
integrally led. So they're not gonna let things that are bad for the protocol or bad for the project pass, right? If they have
Mhm.
10% or 20% of the voting power and they are connected to all the individuals, it's a network of trust, right? I don't think politicians really actually trust each other. I think they're like, all right, I'm going to get what I can until you screw me over, and then I'm going to screw them over. In this governance community, we really trust each other. Even if
Yeah.
someone votes my thing down, I'm not mad at them. I don't really care, right? I'm not like, I'm going to vote your stuff down because you voted my stuff down. I'm like, all right, it didn't make sense this time. We'll figure out a better way to work together in the future. And if there's collusion, it gets discovered quickly. You've seen how
Mhm.
fast news spreads in this community, how fast hacks spread, how fast vulnerabilities spread. A governance collusion is just like a hack. It's going to move fast. People are going to see, you can look at on chain. These tokens were voted for this, and then tokens flowed from that address to this address, right? And maybe there's proxies or something like that. But like that stuff can be discovered. We have the most brilliant like data scientists ever, I think, in this community.
Mhm.
So I think those things can be solved for fast, much faster than in the existing political scheme because of, like I said before, the transparency of the community, right? There are
Yeah.
individuals who are highly motivated to solve these problems. And when they start cropping up, which they very well might do, I think we'll be able to create a solution for them quickly. We don't have one now, and very valid point. We're ripe for this kind of thing, but I think the difference is this community and this system thrives by challenges, right? When
Mhm.
things become harder on this, we make it better. We build better code. We develop better systems.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that with the other systems, they don't do that, right? They tend to fizzle out or this time or they get hardened in their inefficiencies. We evolve really fast and really rapidly and become strengthened to those vulnerabilities.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people draw the comparison. I personally really like the comparison of kind of the DAO space and the Web3 space right now is a lot like the founding of the United States and like with the founding fathers and all, right? Where it was like this group of guys, they were different from politics nowadays, where they all like would fight tooth and nail and they all hate each other. And a lot of them even had personal beef with each other, but they all still at the end of the day respected each other and they really respected what each other did for the country, right? And you can hear about like all these people like talk on their deathbeds about like, you know, these people they had bitterly hated and fought with all their lives. On their deathbeds, they're like, oh well, at least this person's still around to like to make sure the country does what's it's supposed to, right? Because like they all really, even though they all had like personal beef or professional beef, they all respected each other.
Yeah. It was a time of like honor, you know? It was a time of like men being men, you know, having respect. Like you don't go against those things, right? Like I
Yeah.
love that. I love that throwback to olden times, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where I'm not gonna shit talk you on Twitter or something. Like that's petty. You're right. It's like not about that, right? Like if I
Well, I
respect
mean,
you
they
and what
totally
you
did
do
that
as
at
a
the time,
person.
but that's beside the point. I mean, there
Yeah,
was a
yeah,
lot
they
of
did.
shit.
I
If you
remember.
look at it, there was a lot of public shit talking between these guys. But that's what I
Oh
mean was
yeah,
like some of them
yeah.
had like bitter personal rivalries, right? And like that's why, like, yeah,
The
like they would
funny
write
thing is though,
letters
like
about like,
some in the yeah, look at the what was it the papers, the Federalist Papers or whatever,
yeah,
like that
hmm
whole debacle. Yeah, but the funny thing is, it's like at the end of the day, sometimes those things motivated them, right?
hmm
Those bitter battles and stuff. Like you could think of your whole life going through a battle like with someone and then thinking how that person actually shaped you and defined you, right? They
yeah,
pushed you and they helped create you, craft your message and your whatever you were in the world. Like that's quite interesting, actually. If you look at that, it's like
hmm
I don't really hate this person. Like they're just the yin to my yang, right? And that's actually like a really good thing if I look at it like that.
yeah, yeah. No, it's great. I had a relationship like that growing up. One of my best friends, we were like vehemently like competed against each other. Like the competition was so fierce that like our parents got involved and our parents had been friends. Our parents stopped talking to each other because our parents couldn't handle it. Like my friend and I got so competitive that our parents got into huge fights and our parents couldn't handle it anymore. We're still like good friends to this day, but like our parents do not talk to each other anymore
Nice.
because it got that intense.
This reminds me of something I was talking to someone about the other day. They asked me, "How do you measure the health of your community?" And I said, how our community deals with conflict is how we measure the health of the community. Because if there's individuals in the community, and Chair, I don't think you were there, but we had an individual in our community that was a total psyops. He was an early contributor to metagame, and he was out for blood. He wanted to take all the beauty, all the amazing ideas, all the innovations that we had created inside metagame, inside Raid Guild, inside Metacartel, and he wanted to export them to some big conglomerate DAO framework and launch them again with like more resources and then squash us. And we could see this happening because literally he had written about it in the forums. And we were like, I mean, I was personally like, oh no, like this is not going to happen. We're gonna fight this, right? So we just brought it up. Of course, it was a big denial fest. It was all this stuff. But the crazy thing was the community came out in defense of this guy, and they were like, he's been a good contributor. He's been, doing all this good stuff. He's been a participant. And I'm like, you're absolutely right. I'm like, you're absolutely right. And I brought him in, right? I was the one that brought him in and said, I'll vouch for him. I'll let him be a member. I think he's killer because he was killer. He brought so much value. He brought so much high level like clarity into things and was a work machine. But at the end of the day, his intentions were impure and he wanted to do things that would hurt the community and he didn't care how it would affect the community. And instead of saying, because I think we could have come back from that. But instead of saying, "Hey, you know what? You're right. I was wrong. I came here with the wrong intentions, but your community has changed me, and I want to like really work for the community. I believe in it." He said, "I don't think that way. It was a thought experiment, all this kind of stuff." And I was like, "You're just gaslighting, 100%." And we had to find a way to rally around this, against this, because I was like, this person is going to poison the well. Like no one's going to feel safe to bring ideas, to bring wonderful things together if we feel like someone is kind of spying on us, right? And so at the end of the day, like we had to ask them to rage quit the DAO, which they did. We had to ask them to leave the affiliation for the other DAOs, which eventually they just disappeared. They made a big hubbub for about a week and then pieced out. And I always look back at that because there were some people that may have dropped off during that phase and felt like we're on a witch hunt. But I was like, this had to be done. This had to be dealt with. And I don't want to be the person to deal with it. I don't like calling people out, like, you know, I mean, I should be called out sometimes for stupid stuff that I do, but like, I knew at the end of the day, the community was going to suffer if we left this individual in. And if we just let it slide and said, oh, it's okay, I was like, it's going to break us. And now I know that after like going through this and a year later, that we as a community are so much stronger because the people who are in the community, new members and all, they're trustworthy, right? They're aligned, and there's no like fake people. There's, you know, that's why like permission DAOs are interesting with Metacartel specifically, because it's a very high barrier to entry. You have to work your way in or buy your way in, and some people hate that, but it's like those are the two metrics, right, to get your way in. Like, I don't know how One Hive does it honestly, because they have like, it's like, oh, you could just join the DAO, and it's like craziness sometimes. But I'm like, how do you guys manage and all that craziness? Because it's like so much noise, and I can't parse that. But they do an amazing job. Like, I love the project. I just don't know how they do it. I don't know how they parse all the noise.
Yeah, we're feeling a little bit of that with metagame right now because we're like not completely open, but we're very open. Like we'll accept most people that kind of join. Like we have a short, like, you know, I mean, you know, mostly. I don't know if you've been
I'm
pretty
going to be
active
honest. That's what
recently,
drove me away from metagame.
yeah,
There was just too much, right?
yeah, it makes
New
sense. Yeah, we're
people, new
doing a lot of
ideas,
that.
new things
Yeah.
coming in, which is really fun and can be really interesting for conversations and sparking insight. But like, I personally am to the point where I want to do work, right? I want to get things done and ship things. If they take forever, I'm like over it, right? And like, especially when you have new people coming in, there's a lot of training, there's a lot of like reteaching, retelling, and that can be tough. Like if you're at a high level
Yeah.
and you want to execute Bacon, you know it. I can see it on your face. You're like, yeah, for sure.
It's just,
So yeah, I
yeah,
totally understand that.
it's just that's where we're at. That's exactly where we're at right now at metagame. I kind of feel like we're at that tipping point, but it might just be that I got to that tipping point, right? Like it might just be that I feel like we're there because that's the thing with you see a lot in metagame of people projecting. So everyone kind of comes in at different points. Everyone has different levels of activeness and kind of comes and goes, and so everyone's kind of slightly on a different page. And you see people project where they are in the process onto like the way they're interacting. So I can't tell if metagame as a whole is at that tipping point or if I'm just personally at that point
It's just you.
with metagame. But yeah, that's definitely one of the big things we've been talking a
That
lot
would be
about
really
recently.
interesting to do some retrospective like interviews of like
Mm-hmm.
people who pieced out of metagame. Like, at what phase did you piece out of metagame, and what was it that caused you to like want to step away and do other things? Because like, I still love metagame, and I think it's an amazing project, and I hope all the best for it. But like, I'm lost in the server anymore. I have no idea what's happening. Right? It's evolved. It's like this great nebula of like new possibilities, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, wow, there's all these new things. Like, cool, awesome. But like, I wouldn't even know where to plug it in anymore. You know?
Yeah.
It's interesting. That take, like, it's like this is something that's probably been discussed around metagame right around the time that I joined officially. And Bacon, you and I came in at about the same time.
I think so. Yeah.
So, how much do we have to do with that? No, I don't know. One thing that I really enjoy about metagame and the positive parts of it is that we are able to pick up and run with things that make sense, let's say, or for lack of a better word at the moment. But for this, with this podcast, for example, you and I work well together, and we ran with it. Metagame provides a platform to amplify our reach. We have an abundance of resources from getting artwork to getting it edited and stood up, and a bunch of support.
It's actually a really good metagame success story. Now that you bring it up, now that you frame it like that, that's actually a good point because yeah, you got. I mean, I guess I should have let you keep speaking because you're the one who actually did most of it, but you got like a lot of graphic support. You got the publishing support. People wrote show notes for us. They did a second pass of edits because I did the first pass of edits and I'm a total noob at it. So we got a second pass of edits from somebody who actually knows what they're doing. And then we got this, I think I already mentioned the show notes, and they posted it on YouTube too. So that was taken care of for us.
I want all those things. Like, I want all those things in my back pocket as well. And I remember that was one of the most compelling things. I was like, it would be so great to have a community of people who filled in the gaps that I can't do, because 90% of the things you just described I can't do. I can talk, but I can't edit. I can't do art. I can't even post to YouTube. Like, it's all painful for me. But it's so nice when you find other people who want to slot in and fill that up, and you can provide value to them, where you're like, we can flow value to you for helping with this. And that's what I think the seed infrastructure is really powerful for.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to highlight, was that they can go. It really went from inception, couple of days, to we had our first episode out with everything that we mentioned with really, like, I don't want to say flawless coordination, but things moved rather fast from first iteration of artwork to edits and updates and getting posted to Spotify, YouTube, and now we kind of have a pipeline. So as far as a success story and hopefully as an example of how things can go, this is what Metagame provides. The inception came from Bacon and I. We put initial work in. We identified needs that the community could support, and everyone is rewarded for it. And it's like, hopefully we can close the loop with some listenership and drive people towards the projects that our guests are involved with, that we're involved with. And then that, will hopefully be the benevolent loop that's my ideal. That's what I saw in Metagame as the deeper that I looked into it, is that there's a great willingness of its members, especially like the older members, the people that have been around longer, to contribute to things that they feel are worthy, that they like, and it never feels like work. Seldomly does it feel like I'm just laboring on something just to get it done. Anything I ever did for Seeds is like, yes.
Isn't that the whole DAO ecosystem though? Like, aren't all the other projects that you're involved in like kind of amazingly fun and interesting and surrounded by your friends?
Yeah, it's just like that. Yeah,
Exactly.
and they're all labors of love. Greetings, listeners. This is Bacon, coming to you from the Share What You're Making studio. You've just listened to our talk with Yalor. I would like to call it an interview. It was more of us just rambling. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. I certainly enjoyed talking with Yalor and finding a like mind in the crypto space. A couple last things just to wrap up before we finish the episode here. We would like to thank, first of all, I neglected to thank them last episode, but we would like to thank Blast Vegas for our wonderful theme song. The theme song being Natural Feeling by Blast Vegas. Check them out on Spotify, I think they have a Bandcamp page or something like that. And also, if you're in the LA space, check them out in person, live. I would also like to remind our listeners that MCON is going on this coming week. There are events going on all week in Denver, but the conference and when I will be attending is specifically scheduled for Wednesday the 15th, Thursday the 16th, and Friday the 17th. It is sold out, but if you find yourself in the Denver area, please come by to hit up any of the side events or just hang out with us. It should be a fun time for all. Thank you for listening. This has been Share What You're Making with Chair and Bacon. Unfortunately, Chair's not here to give us that juicy outline, so I guess we'll just have to see you next time.
He started COVID.
Yeah, that was me. COVID was an inside job by me, Bacon. Take that to the bank. Call the FBI. Call your senator.
Ladies and gentlemen, brought to you by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, this is Share What You're Making.